Good evening. Welcome everybody to the Town of Pittsburgh Planning Board special meeting for Monday, October 6th, 2025. I'll call this meeting to order. We will not be doing public comment for this meeting. It is a special meeting. So you are aware, if anybody does have questions they would like answered, you can submit those to staff and we'll get back to you. We do have a quorum. I think we are only missing Miss Alston. And so I think the only thing that we'll be voting on tonight is to approve this agenda. So if I could get a motion to approve the agenda as proposed or modified.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Charity.
Second.
Second by Alan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Agenda is approved as proposed. We will move on to our one and only item, the South Village Small Area Plan discussion. Just as a reminder, we are not voting to make any recommendations tonight. This is strictly to educate ourselves on the matter and make sure that we have a good understanding of what we're looking at. Ms. Teresa, are you ready? All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight. We're going to go through the small area plan together, and we have additional staff. So as we go through each chapter, we will try to answer any questions that y'all have. I'm going to hit on some notes when we had the first presentation and the staff analysis with that. So if y'all remember that, we're going to touch on that a little bit and just go from chapter 1 to the last chapter. And then at the end, if there's additional questions that you think of, we can go back to whichever chapter we need to. We can open up.
You want us to save our questions for the end, or?
No, you can ask them throughout each chapter. So if we scroll down, table of contents, abbreviations. Actually, if you go back to the abbreviations, please. Just wanted to make a note that that section was added with this last submittal, the fifth submittal. So staff is reviewing that, and there's probably going to be some additional changes made to it. Nothing drastic, but just so you know that this was a newer section that was added with the last fifth submittal. Then you go to chapter 1. Chapter 1 mainly is speaking to the conceptual nature of the small area plan, which was added with this fifth submittal as well. Just to clarify that it is a conceptual plan and changes can be made and required by staff in the future, depending on what kind of issues are brought up in the future, like evolving community needs and public safety concerns. There's also section on the next page, starting on the next page, speaking to the next steps that we've all been talking about for a couple of months. Again, this is not final. Staff is reviewing this again, since this is newer language from the past couple of months. But we wanted to get this to you in the plan so you can start reviewing it and giving us any feedback, answering any questions that you have.
Yes.
But this section in particular is a newer section.
So back on page 1, it says here that no more than 6 section design plans shall be submitted per section of the South Village. That is the last, last sentence in the second paragraph.
Correct.
Okay, so that means that the section design plans can go anywhere from 4 to 24.
It's actually a lot more. If there's 16 sections,
Oh, okay.
This
So
is
so you're
allowing-
not reading a section as like all of those under 2.1, 2.2.
yeah, so there's the 16 overall sections that you see on that map.
Okay, well, that's one to
Of
make,
that, it was originally discussed to have up to 4, and then Chatham Park requested to have up to 6. per
okay,
section.
all right. So I guess the only question I have is who makes the final determination of how many section design plans there will be?
The way it's written, it would be the applicant, Chatham Park would decide. So, the reasoning that was requested for that was at the beginning of construction for each section, the applicant might not have everything, the entire section, planned out what they want to do. So they could, the idea was that they could submit some smaller sections to begin with. But the intent would be at some point between the 1 and 6, that we would get enough of an overview of the entire section so that we could start having conversations with Chatham Park on the design and talking about the infrastructure and additional needs, which was kind of the point of having this extra step, where staff could start having conversations before plans are drawn and given to us. That was something that we learned in the North Village. So as of now, it's requested to have up to 6 per section.
In terms of submissions, just the math of it, we could have as many as 16 or as little as 3.
No, you could have as little as 16 and I think as many as 96, if I'm doing the math correctly.
So it'd be
6
per section, and there's 16 sections.
I thought they could submit 6 of the 16 at one time.
That was part of some of the conversations in the beginning, but this is where it ended with,
Okay.
as of now,
Okay, that makes more
for the Chatham Park's last request.
and that would be staff review, right? Not planning board or town review, or the section design plan.
That would start with a conversation with staff. If someone from the board would like to be a part of that, that's fine. That's not how we originally discussed it, but I think in one of the prior meetings, someone asked that. So if that's what the board would prefer, someone from the planning board or the board of commissioners could be a part of the initial conversations. But 3 to 6 months prior to the section design plan being submitted, like in paper, we would have these conversations. So we can get like a sketch drawing to begin with. But we would start talking about what the concerns are for that section before all the time has been spent by the applicant to put the plans together. So 3 to 6 months, we would have those conversations. By the time they submit it, we should all be on the same page of what's being submitted. And at that point, we would take it to the planning board for recommendation and the town board for a final approval.
And at what point would the public have any input to any of that?
The submittal is public record. There's not a step like what we're seeing now for the small area plan where the public would have comments, like a public comment period, but you're always welcome, the public's always welcome to review plans and give comments.
But they're not even going to see it until it's pretty far along in the process.
Well, any time that we receive anything in writing, even the sketch drawing, that's public record. So anybody could request to see it. At that point, when we're reviewing these section design plans, we're looking more at the logistics and the community needs in terms of public safety more than anything. So it's not about, I'm assuming like the public might be concerned with density or the layout or, you know, what the requirements are for like a element, for example, stormwater. That's not the time to require updates to the section design plan. That would be separate conversations on what in the elements do we need to update, if that makes sense. So it's more of an administrative review. Staff can require additional standards at that time, but it doesn't go through the full, you know, receiving public comments, 2 weeks like the small area plan does. But again, I mean, everything is public record. The public can be involved. They can submit comments. When it goes to the planning board, they can submit comments at that time as well.
Okay.
Well, now what, under this process, what will go to the planning board then?
The entire section design plan.
The entire section design?
Yes, sir.
For reference or for
For
recommendation?
approval, for a recommendation of approval or denial.
Help me here. I just want to deconstruct the addressing town standards 1 and 2, just to make sure I understand. So down here, it says that, subdivision, site plans, public facilities, et cetera, must be designed and constructed to conform to at least minimum requirements, state, local, federal regulatory government unit or agency having jurisdiction, including the town, in effect, the time the proposed development is submitted to the town. Okay, so help me out, the proposed development, what are we?
So when they submit their, at any step, section design plan, subdivision plat in the future, site plan, whatever the applicable standards are at that time, you know, if it's 10 years from now, whatever we have in the UDO that's in effect at that time, that's applicable to that development, at whatever stage they're at, they have to meet that.
So I guess my only question is proposed development. I mean, is that too broad a term, or I guess I'm questioning, should that be defined better as saying section design plan, plats, so on?
We can define that better.
Okay.
I agree that development's kind of broad. We'd probably just refer to what the statutes define it as.
Okay.
That's how we do in the UDO as well. So we can,
Then the next one, any future unified development ordinance or other land use ordinance applicable throughout the planning jurisdiction of the town. So when does that come into effect? Let's say that there is a change to the UDO. Would that also then influence the section design plan?
only if it's applicable. Like if there's if there's an element that already speaks to whatever that standard is, then they would have to fall under the element. But if there's something that's in the UDO that's not addressed in an element, then they would have to meet the UDO.
Okay. All right, I'll shut up.
I'm sure everybody understands it.
So I think you said that the entire section design plan would come to us on the planning board. But most of these points have a little asterisk beside them, which says staff level administrative decision by the town board of commissioners. That doesn't mention anything about the planning board.
That's something that we're going to update. So what we did as staff was put this language together initially. And I presented it to the planning board and the town board to try to get some feedback on what, what we're doing right now, kind of. And we just haven't updated it since then. We're still receiving feedback and talking about it internally. So that's one note we've already made. So where it says staff level administrative decision, I think we're going to just take that asterisk out and just keep the asterisk that says it's discretionary decision. So it's still going to the board. It's just what level of I guess, approval are we doing, if it's administrative or discretionary? So like when y'all review preliminary plats, that's administrative. When you're reviewing rezonings, that's discretionary. So those are the two types of approvals.
Maybe we'll come back to this later and stuff, but just, or perhaps towards the end, the elemental review process and stuff. So what's the frequency and the process like and the transparency to the public of those reviews? Is that with the planning board and CPI, or is that open to anyone else, or what is that process like? Maybe we can address that later if you want to.
Well,
It says
I can
like,
address that now because that's more of a side note, but it's come up several times. So the way it's written now is that it's required for the applicant to have discussions with the Board of Commissioners annually. What we're looking at that for the next steps is that the town staff would meet with the applicant. We would discuss any sort of updates we think is needed, within reason, to the elements. And this is going to be based on all the reviews that we've done. We notice an issue with that. And we have an ongoing list of what we're calling workshop topics. So we talked to the applicant about that. And again, if someone would like to attend that meeting, that's fine as well. But we would have those conversations with the applicant, discuss it, come to a resolution on what hopefully the town and the applicant agree on to update the element, and then take that to the town board for discussion and approval to update the element.
so last thing I'll say about it. So it's based on like the town planning board or the town planning department's reviews and stuff of changes and things that are going on. Like, is that influenced at all by these public comments or by concerns of citizens about?
It can be.
Can be, okay.
Yes, but with staff, we're looking, again, going back to like public safety issues. We can't just require Chatham Park or anyone really, unless we're going through the original conditional rezoning process. At that point, you can ask and try to come to an agreement with an applicant. But at this point, we couldn't just require someone, let's say, to build SCMs to meet the 100-year storm event. We just can't do that. That's not a requirement anywhere.
We can ask though. I mean, like if it's like the amount of tree coverage or the amount of, and
if it's something that is a concern that we see as staff, and it can come from the public can call me anytime.
okay.
And I meet, with people from the community quite often. And that is how we're notified sometimes on issues that we hadn't thought about. So that is helpful. But yeah, there's a difference in trying to just make something more restrictive just because you would think that's a good idea versus, okay, this is an issue that we need to address
Yes.
from a community safety standpoint.
Thank you.
Okay, page 2.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, we spent so much time on page 1,
Oh,
ready for us to
That's your-
go on to page. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
okay.
Sorry. It's a joke. Sorry.
Okay, got it.
Okay, next time.
All right, I'm being too serious. Okay. So yeah, that's chapter 1. Again, we're going to be making some updates to this. We'll bring it back to you. And we can go to chapter 2.
Oh, one other question.
Yes, sir.
Top of page 4. Traffic impact analysis for the section may be submitted with the section design plan or done with the first preliminary plat submission or submittal.
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't know, I'm just a little concerned about the timing there.
So the way we discussed it is that if they do not submit it with the first section design plan, whenever they go to submit their first preliminary plat, they have to submit it for the entire section at that time.
Makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Chapter 2. This is when we get into a little more detail on the standards. Again, nothing's written in stone, but let's say going to page 16, for example, you can see the proposed development standards. There's some things that we've been able to address, such as like the driveway lengths and the building setbacks from the side of sidewalk or edge of curb and things like that. This is what Chatham Park is committed to. So the applicant moving forward, this is the development standards that they are adhering to. In the future, again, going back to the section design plans and what the staff level approval or recommendations to the board, if there's an issue that we see that needs to be addressed at that time, then we would say this needs to be updated. Either a setback could be increased, the driveway length could be increased, for example. That was something that was done with the North Village. We went from 18 to 20 feet because even though a standard parking space is 9 by 18, no one's going to park right up against their driveway garage door. So we added that 2 feet. So that's an example of something that staff requested be updated. So, 5 years, 10 years from now, I'm sure there'll be additional changes that staff's going to request to be updated for that section design plan. But at a minimum, this is what you see is what is going to be done.
And this has been adjusted from the North Village.
Correct.
Okay.
I was just using that as an example of something else that might change in the future. That we don't want this to be written in stone forever, because there could be some adjustments needed.
I had a quick question. Oh,
No, go ahead.
I had a question, an actual question this time. No. About the Moncure small area plan. I'm not familiar with how these two things interact with each other, like this small area plan with that one. So could you help me understand that a little better?
Yeah. So Moncure, that's under the county's jurisdiction.
Mhm.
County has a comprehensive land use plan, just like how we do. And within their land use plan, they identify areas that they would like to have these small area plans conducted. And the Moncure area is one of them. So it's just an area where they foresee a lot of growth in the future. They want to get ahead of that and plan for it. So it's similar to Chatham Park, but they don't overlap each other in any way.
It's near each other, perhaps.
Correct. Yes. It's just another type of future land use planning tool that staff, developers, board members, everyone can use to give them direction. It's very, it's something that's going to help everybody in the long run have an idea of, okay, this is the plan that has been agreed upon by the entire jurisdiction, the community, the town board. And so we feel comfortable in, let's say, moving forward with development plans based on that. So it's not written in stone, but it gives people direction on how to move forward.
Thank you.
So Teresa, the development standards, let's take your example, 5, 10, 15 years down the road that you want to change one of these standards. But at that point, it's just a request of the applicant. There's no obligation.
There is an obligation. So staff, we can require it.
Okay.
Now, if the board doesn't agree with us, then you guys do have the final decision. But as we're going through conversations, the 3 to 6 months prior to section design plan submittal, and then as we're reviewing the section design plan at any time, staff can say, okay, we're going to require this to be changed from this to this, and this is why. But there's always that check and balance, it's going to the boards as well. So if it's, staff in the future is asking for something that's silly, that we want you to, only build 30-story apartments or something like that, and you're not allowed to do anything else in the section. That's something that the board could say, that's not really relevant to what you should be reviewing. Okay, so page. I did want to show you actually on page 14. This is their proposed land use quantities map. So it shows what the section is, what the use was that was approved back in 2015, and the entitlements that were given at that time, what the proposed or what the total number of dwelling units and total maximum number of non-residential square feet allowed. So based on what was approved in 2015, overall for the entire 7,000 acres was 22,000 dwelling units and non-residential square feet, 20 million, excuse me. And they're just showing this is how they project breaking that down. And they did the same thing in the North Village.
So in 2015, I think we had 16 different small area plans, or a number of different small area plans was initially proposed and stuff. So with one small area plan, is there any sort of guideline or say on what comes first, like, or how if these are grouped all together instead of in separate groups and stuff? Can they happen at the same time, or
They can.
yeah, and they can kind of pick and choose. First, I want to do a golf neighborhood, and then I want to do commercial building, and then eventually I want to build homes or multifamily homes, right?
I mean, that's up to the applicant.
With one large small area plan.
Well, this is the conceptual.
Right.
So when we start getting the section design plans, it won't be conceptual anymore. But they can choose in what order they're going to submit that.
Okay.
So I was looking at this chart, and just because I was curious about how much space was going to be used for residential versus research and development, which I assume is where the jobs might be found. But these numbers don't add up. So I'm a little confused. The first column, that 4702, if you add all those numbers, that's not what you come up with.
Really?
Okay, it should be very, how off was it? Because
I got 4840.
4840, okay. I know it's been updated a couple of times as we've been having conversations. Yeah, based on the math that I put in my staff report, there was a total of 4,843 acres in the South Village. So yeah, not 4702. So we'll make sure that, we'll talk to the applicant about that. See what needs to,
I didn't
which
check
ones.
the rest of them, but
Okay.
first.
We can check them all.
Yeah. I know the entire South Village, we say 5,000 acres. It's obviously not exactly 5,000. So we'll discuss that with the applicant. I think that's been hard to pin down what the exact number is, but we'll at least make sure that that's updated. In regards to the percentage, though, of non-residential versus residential, what was originally approved didn't specify what that could be in the research and development section. So staff recommends, which is in the chapter 1, that at least 50 or a maximum of 50% can be residential. So at least 50% of the research and development section would have to be non-residential.
So this whole project is promoted as a place where people can live and work. I'm not seeing where those jobs are going to be. I mean, this looks like about 400 and some acres are identified as research and development, and now we're saying that half of that can be residential. So just out of curiosity, I didn't know what that meant, so I was trying to find something comparable. And I looked up Wolf Speed, which is 445 acres, and they expected that space to support 1,800 jobs, which wouldn't be anywhere near enough to support all the jobs for all the residences that we're talking about here. So where are the jobs going to be?
I think that would be more of a question for the applicant. Yeah.
So too.
Speaking of what was permitted in 2015, was that there was not a minimum percentage of what has to be non-residential in those research and development sections. So with having discussions with the applicant, it was agreed to allow up to 50% of it to be residential still. So if in terms of how many jobs it's going to provide or anything like that, staff wouldn't be able to answer that question. So,
I read this, the res DU column, that's residential dwelling units proposed versus the max. So in each of those are research and development areas, it looks like there's fewer residential dwelling units than what the max is. Does that
Correct.
read that? Okay. Okay.
and this is just a snapshot again, so it is conceptual, but what the applicant did agree to was that at least 50% would be non-residential in those sections. So if you have questions for the applicant,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you want to.
Like we'll save those for our next meeting.
Okay, so we'll just write that down as a question. Or
I mean, and to the same point of like thinking to determine, when are you going to build jobs first or going to build homes first? Yeah.
It would just be acreage dedicated to commercial. Am I understanding that correctly? It was acreage dedicated to commercial building, not job creation, whatever. So at least 50% of it would need to be dedicated to a commercial, some kind of commercial endeavor.
50% of
At
about.
least 50% of it. Yeah.
yes, correct. Yeah, I wouldn't think the applicant would know, exactly percentage of jobs and things like that at this point. But
It's not the applicant's job, I don't believe, to bring in the jobs. Is that the wrong statement? Like, they're setting up a development for a building type and the town needs to bring the jobs through incentives and corporations and things like that. Am I missing that? Is that the wrong way to think of that?
I wouldn't say we do promote economic development in town, and in terms of incentives, I mean, that's kind of an opinion on if that is valuable or not for a jurisdiction to do, but in terms of what the land use is what we're discussing. So again, yeah, like it could be in those sections, it's reserved for non-residential. If the market doesn't allow for it, then it might not happen as planned. It might not happen, for years, depending on if things are pushed back by the applicant. We're just talking about land use at this point.
But within the elements, they're kind of touting this live, work, play. And it looks like
Yeah.
everyone's just going to be living mostly.
It's all it's on bulletin boards and it's all in the introduction, right? So it's.
But it looks like these people in 2.1 are just kind of living.
So yeah, I think the intent of the small area plan and the section design plans is to give you a snapshot of this is what the land is zoned for, designated for. So we don't know exactly what that would be. Whatever's allowed in 2015 for each section, there's a permitted use table, just like we have in the UDO. And it says what all of the uses are allowed in that section. So in 2015, residential was allowed in every single section. So that's what the entitlements were at that time. Based on conversations staff has had with the applicant, they've agreed to state that up to 50% can be residential, whereas what was entitled back in 2015 was 100%.
I think we have to be also realize what we're asking. We wanted this flexibility for the town to be able to, in the future, make different requirements for the development as things change. But now we're also asking for some certainty on where things will be. And we've got to realize we can't really have both of those things.
We can assess this plan here, though. In front of us,
Correct.
and
Absolutely.
these maps in front of us,
Yes.
because this is what we're approving.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is what we are approving or not.
So the bottom line is what's in this plan is the opportunity for jobs, but not any guarantees, and I really wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, we have to look at what was actually approved in 2015, not marketing and things like that. So we are going to page 20. Wait. Excuse me. I'm just going through my staff analysis. So the requirements for the land use categories, they have been met. The last part. Okay, yeah. You can go to page 25, actually. B, approval of alternatives. We are working with the applicant on updating that language. So this was the original language provided by the applicant in terms of the small area plan being approved more as a written in stone sort of plan. And it talks about that staff could give administrative alternatives to future plans, which is something that's already allowed through the elements. But now that we're talking about the section design plan step, that section B is probably no longer even needed. So we have talked about removing that.
I'm sorry, which section are you talking about removing?
B, like boy, approval of alternatives, development standards.
There's a whole section.
Correct. And then moving on to page 27. Because this plan is conceptual and not all of the details have been ironed out yet, there's section J, which is for determination of public facility sites. And again, this is that discretionary decision that we talked about. So in terms of like the fire department, transit, schools, that would also include like park facilities. We will get more information as development occurs in the future. So like, for example, there's only one school site proposed as of right now. Realistically, it's probably going to be 2 to 3 at least. So because that hasn't been ironed out this time, Just wanted that language to be clear that as they submit section design plans, we will be reviewing when is another school site going to be required, and have those conversations early on.
What land will be used for that?
Right.
What land will not be used for that?
Exactly. And transit network. So as of right now, the town doesn't really have one. We use the county system for that, but it's mostly as needed, income-based. So I'm assuming in the future we'll have like a bus system. And once we have more detail on that, we would be able to require those details in the future, which we just don't have right now. So I just wanted to point that out. And going towards the bottom where it starts talking about park dedication, this language is new as well. So town staff has been working with the consulting group Pond and put language together. So that's still in discussions. That's another section that we will probably be making a few more updates to before it's finalized. I don't foresee it being anything major, but wanted to mention that as well, that we wanted to clarify what those steps are for park dedications.
To go back to section K here, revisions to the South Village Small Area Plan. Note I made as I was reading it is how are decisions made in this meeting? Like what's the ultimate, like, is it just like a consulting meeting? And then is there any public input included in that? Besides, a member of the public could attend the meeting, but there wouldn't be, I should ask the question, is there any kind of voting that would happen or any kind of not administrative review, but discretionary review of any changes that come about from the annual
Yes.
meeting?
And we can clarify that. We can add additional language. So back to what I was saying with this being conceptual, but it's also what the applicant is agreeing to as a minimum. So in the future, town staff can say, we need additional standards for these reasons. We can do that without revising this plan. We just do that with each section design plan. This section's more relevant for the applicant wanting to make changes. So the town, if there is something that the town would like it to be changed, we can have those conversations. Regardless though, whether it's the applicant that wants to update something or the town, we would have to go back through the entire process all over again, like what we're doing right now. And it is a legislative process.
If there are changes to the small area plan.
Correct. But that, I foresee that mainly being from the applicant and not the town, because we can still require additional, because it's conceptual, we can still require additional standards in the future. We don't have to go back and change this every time. And that was part of the reason why another reason we wanted to do section design plan, so we don't have to go back and change this every time.
Are the phrases sense of place or developmental character, like standard phrases, or like for an industry like this? When we're using like sense of place and development character, right? So they can improve or change the plan based upon that. Like, is that continuity of what we're talking about? For instead of having 16 plans, we have one for that reason.
Having the comprehensive plan does add value to sense of place and development character, because we know from a 5,000 acre viewpoint of how this development is going to be built. We know what the overall design is going to be and the interconnectivity of it. We know it's going to, they're going to provide schools and things like that. They don't have the detail of public art, for example. That's a chapter in here and it's a pretty small chapter. We will get that detail when we go through the section design plans. But that's not really, that's more to show us, the intent of that is more to show us what they're planning to do. It's not to say, oh, well, we think, this art plan, we don't like it, we think it's ugly or something like that. Like, that's still the private developer's discretion, on how they put artwork in their own development. Unless it's on public property. So, I mean, yeah, that's standard terminology
Okay.
that you hear. I mean, that goes back to why we have zoning to begin with, is so that you're not just driving through a town and it looks like anywhere USA, like you drive through Pittsburgh and you say, okay, this is Pittsburgh. And that's because of sense of place, and standards is what allows that.
So Teresa, I mean, I have a couple other notes, but they've been addressed. But, the annual requirement for the meeting, I mean, is that locking you into something that's not flexible enough? I mean, my note here was to occur at least in.
Well, this would be tied into the annual updates and look aheads anyways. So we would have these conversations with them. It wouldn't be like I don't foresee it being like a separate agenda item.
Elemental review meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that'd be.
We would just make sure it's happening. I mean, if the applicant doesn't want to make changes, then there's really no reason to meet about it either.
Well, except for just making sure that everyone knows we're at least asking for it. I mean, I think that's
Yes.
important in and of itself. If we're saying, hey, we're going to meet with them annually or quarterly or biannually, and we're going to ask for these things. And every single time they say no, like I think that's in and of itself important
But
to
I
know.
think, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't you still meet with them on a regular basis to develop the section design plans?
Right. Well, and this is a requirement, but again, this is a requirement that's based on the small area plan being written in stone.
Mhm.
Since it's conceptual now, it's not like we are needing to make annual updates. I mean, there could be annual updates made, but since we're doing the section design plans, if that's what the board agrees to do, then we would just discuss whatever updates need to be made through that process. Moving on to chapter 3.
Sorry. Page 28, something I wanted to just understand a little bit better about the park stuff. Further design and construction. So this is right above the paragraph, right above the section park design. Further design and construction costs needed to complete the remainder of the park master plan will be provided by the town. And I know in the back of I think in one of the appendices or towards the end, there was like, monies allocated or at minimum 500,000, minimum 3 million, all that sort of thing. So if I want to make sure I understand it. So like so right now, any kind of park that comes together for Chatham Park if it's over a certain acreage, then the parks director helps in the planning for that park. Do I have that right?
Mhm.
Cool.
And the plans and parks, but
Over 5.
guy pays one.
Correct. And our parks director is here too, if you'd like to speak with her, but to answer your question, yes.
And then, but they have the minimum amounts that they would provide. Is there any flexibility in that? Because, as costs have increased in everything, is that just the minimum that?
I think that was decided already in the original approvals. Yeah.
That is their required. They can't go over, but they can't go under.
Okay.
Is that controlled with cost of inflation, stuff like that? Or no, it's not? Oh,
So again, that's what was approved.
Mhm.
2015, that was through the conditional rezoning. So like, as Corey said, it's kind of, there's things that you would like, I'm sure, to say, okay, well, maybe we should have thought that in 2015, but there's a lot of things that it's kind of like, at this point, what we're reviewing now is not asking them to, increase the amount they're going to pay, because that was already agreed upon.
I wasn't suggesting that they.
No, I'm just.
It's a question of like, what is happening in terms of, costs to the town of Pittsburgh to outfit a park
Yes.
that is in the development that, I understand, but I'm just curious about.
The response was more to a lot of the comments that have been made in the past couple of months when I've presented this to the planning board and the town board. of, what can we like require them to do for them to get approved, almost like leverage. And so it's hard to explain, but, and the town attorney's here. He can explain it better than I can, I'm sure. But there's entitlements that were given back in 2015. And that's not exactly what we're looking at today. We can't just say, okay, we'll approve you if you change that.
Well, we can always ask for like, so we can talk about financial impact analysis and it's absent of any sort of expenses. That would be a great example of an expense to the town that could perhaps be occurred and stuff like, but we didn't have any expenses on our financial impact analysis. That would, I'm sure there's many, many more and stuff.
Right, you can
Yeah.
always ask, but for it to be implied that it's going to impact if an approval is going to be made or not, I guess is the point that I was making.
Well, but the approval, the complete application is, requires a financial impact analysis and stuff, and to have a financial analysis that doesn't include any expenses and stuff is like, well, then it is a complete application if that's what we're going to accept to be able to review and stuff like, ooh.
And I've talked internally with staff about that, and additional information is going to be requested
Awesome.
for that. So we'll have more details on that as well.
Oh, and just one, I was real pleased that the provision in here, the town staff will lead the public engagement process in at least 3 touch points with the community. So that's basically what you're doing now, going out and having an in-person meeting, doing surveys and those. Okay, great.
As we get larger, needs it will change. And so what we want to make sure is, especially for these larger parks, that we're not just saying, oh, this is going to be the design of the park. We want to make sure is this what the community needs.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to make sure we have it in there to make sure there's going to be that.
There's a complete difference in the private development design process versus public land.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to chapter 3. An update regarding transportation is the consultant that we've been using, RK&K. They have received the second submittal by the applicant. And when we spoke to them a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, they said that they expected to have comments in, I think about 9th or 10th. So it should be soon. And at that point, it will be sent back to the applicant and any adjustments can be made at that point. So that's kind of on hold as well. So as soon as we get an update from RK&K or a recommendation for approval or not, we will let you know.
I think on that question, one of the main concerns is the idea of taking planned streets through existing private property need to be known if that was planned ahead of time.
What was that? I'm sorry.
If there is a plan in the traffic plan through eminent domain or whatever means the DOT does it, to take streets through private property or subdivisions, that would be a good thing to know ahead of the vote.
So yes, the land that is shown where streets are going to go in the small area plan will not have that issue, of course.
There's a couple of places where dotted lines go outside the small area plan. And
Right.
That's the ones I'm talking about. But
So that's more of a concern with our comprehensive transportation plan, which there's a map of that on page 33. Next page. So this is our town's comprehensive transportation plan. This has nothing to do with the small area plan. They did include it in it as reference, though. They are required to be consistent with this plan. Any proposed development that comes to town is required to be consistent. And if it's not consistent, then staff will not approve it, or we won't recommend for the town board to approve it, or planning board to, give a recommendation on it. The difference with Chatham Park is they had a model done. that shows that some of those corridors, those future corridors are not needed. So they propose actually removing a couple of them, like in the Hinks Chapel area, and readjusting the lines. So there was a model that was created for that, and that's what RK&K is reviewing.
Okay, great.
If RK&K is in agreement with what Chatham Park is proposing, they will make a recommendation for us to approve what the small area plan shows. And what that means is we will actually update the comprehensive transportation plan to match what the small area plan shows. But anything outside of Chatham Park, that is a town's concern for future development. And keep in mind that these corridors are 1,000-foot wide lines on a map. So they can always move around. And as we get more information moving forward, some of them might be in completely different locations. This is, just kind of going back to what we were discussing, like with the Moncure small area plan. It's just a planning tool that we all can use to get an idea of how development should occur, but it can always change in the future with more information. And then on page 36. Regarding the transportation analysis, we are going to update this language to also, state what we discussed before about the traffic impact analysis for each section is required either with the first section design plan or the first preliminary plat. So we'll make that clear in that section as well. Okay. Some of the comments in the staff analysis have been addressed, which when we bring this back to you, it'll all be updated to include, what items have been finalized or, there's still issues being worked out. So the rest of this chapter, we talk about cross sections. We want that to be clear that they are conceptual. So if you go to page 42, this is another example of what the applicant is agreeing to. So at a bare minimum, you will see every street, with sidewalks, multi-use paths as shown. Again, this can change in the future. Staff can say that this street typical needs to be modified for XYZ reason in the future.
It's all consistent with the PDD, right?
I'm sorry?
It's all PDD consistent stuff, not new, nothing new there.
No, that actually would be based on like town specifications.
Is it different than the north?
Chatham Park does not have a element or anything like that for section street typicals. So that would fall under what's in the small area plan, which is what they're agreeing to. But then also they'd have to meet any town specs in the future. Or, like what we were saying with staff can bring up issues in the future that were not thought about at this time and can require changes for that. And
Teresa, cyclists will use multi-use trails?
I think that's probably more of a question for Ben Schmidecki. He's with our engineering department.
Okay,
That's right. No bike lanes are
okay. So
multi-use path.
will bikes be prohibited on the street?
No, they're designed to accommodate both cyclists and people walking.
Okay, that's all right.
And those are separate than the 20 miles of greenway.
Your road.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Is there like a souped up sidewalk, right, essentially?
The chapter also speaks to transit stops, which we talked about will be updated in the future. And back on, in the first chapter, it clarifies that transit stop locations will be finalized prior to section design plan approvals. Any questions about transportation? Nope, okay.
Actually, there was a question brought up at the previous meeting about the timing of the development of the roads versus the development of and maybe this is a question for the applicant. Will they be building the roads significantly before building the neighborhoods, or?
So there's no requirements that a road has to be built at a certain timeline before development, but clearly no development would ever be approved unless there was a road there. And, you know, or being built. If we were to approve a subdivision, it would also show what the proposed right of way is. And so during the CD process, we would approve this engineer drawings. They would have to develop at least 75% of all the improvements before we can approve their final plat. So that's, you know, that's already a requirement that would be addressed. But in terms of like when a certain major road is going, you know, what the applicant is planning, when they're planning on developing that road, there's no standards or anything like that that would require it to be done.
Something they brought up as a reason why they wanted this large, small area plan.
Oh, okay. So we can add that, I guess, to a conversation question with the applicant next time?
Yeah, I don't know. When we were asking why this large, small area plan, this was one of the reasons they gave.
Okay. I know that it was in regards to planning out the roads for sure.
I asked, it was about planning them out, the design.
You can still plan them out in separate sections, so that's what I didn't understand in terms of.
Well, the major corridors are shown in this plan, and that was a reason for approving it as a large comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
So that we can see what the major roads are going to look like throughout the entire 5,000 acres.
Okay.
So maybe that's what you heard, but that's my guess is probably what the intent was.
Okay.
Not timeline for actually building it, but that we're giving an approval for the overall layout. And that does benefit the developer in planning for the future corridors. Because like I said, it is different from the CTP. So we wouldn't be able to actually approve anything unless we updated the CTP. We can't update the CTP until this gets approved.
Okay.
Next chapter is utilities. And Tri-River did present to y'all a couple of months ago. The overall feedback was that there's no major concerns from Tri-River moving forward, that the way it's planned out, they agree with. So if there's any specific questions about utilities, we didn't ask them to come tonight, but anything in addition to that, we can always write it down and bring it back to you.
I had some questions about the water, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm looking on page 50, and it talks about reserved capacities described above. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what is proposed versus what has been approved in terms of, and I don't know if this is a you question or somebody else question. Because it seems like from what I can tell that 5 MGD, so I guess it's 1 million gallons a day. Is that what it means? Okay, cool, good. That's already happening, but that Chatham Park would need, I think it was what, 4.7, if I have it correct? They would need 4.7 or 4.9, something like that.
By 2050?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear on how I'm clear on how the water distribution is gonna happen if it's not been approved yet in terms of this expansion of availability of services.
The applicant can speak more to that. From what I understood with the presentation is that there would be future capacities for that provided by Tri-River and that they didn't see a concern with that, but
I'm more curious about, I understand that there could potentially be more capacity, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, future development outside of Chatham Park, if nothing else gets approved, they would have most of the future capacity available.
so. Okay, so with the future city of Sanford, it shows, what those allocations would be. And then it also says Western Intake Partners. And I know there has been conversations with that. So that's just future planning. That hasn't been approved or anything like that yet.
Right, and I see like in the paragraph above that, it said at present, Tri-River Water has elected not to participate in phase 1 of the Western Intake Partners project anticipated to come online in 2031. So I don't understand why it would be, I understand that it's like, in theory, this is something that could happen sometime in the future. But if it's not, if Tri-River doesn't decide to participate, what kind of capacity would there be for any other development outside of Chatham Park in the town of Pittsburgh?
So up until we made the merger with Tri-River, there was zero capacity. No development could happen. So, really, it just depends on what gets approved in the future with Tri-River. And then what other kinds of partnerships the town can make that have not been figured out yet. We're planning in advance, looking at future needs, 10, 20 plus years out. Which Tri-River would probably be the best to explain, what the future planning looks like. But just in general, like in terms of development, we don't give any sort of approvals for any sort of development permit. So that includes preliminary plats, site plans, zoning permits, unless you actually have allocation. So we'd have to have something from Tri-River or another entity saying they will be provided sewer allocation, for their needed capacity. And with Chatham Park, they had their own water recovery center and they would provide their own letters saying that they have that. So just in general, in the future, if that additional approval is not given, then additional development would not happen anywhere in town.
Unless they had a separate agreement with Tri-Water.
Tri-River.
Tri-River.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why, I guess my question is, why is it in here if it doesn't affect Chatham Park? Or does
So
it?
this does affect Chatham Park. I was just saying in general, that's how development approvals work. Like, this is just for planning purposes to show you what they're looking at doing, how they're looking at providing utilities for the South Village. Doesn't mean that it's all ironed out yet.
Teresa, I'm looking at the map on page 51, and some of these proposed force mains are going through private property, and I'm wondering what the impact of that is on those properties. Specifically off of Moncure Pittsboro Road. Section 3.B.
Proposed South Village force mains. I'm not sure if those are areas that we already have easements for, or do you know? Those red lines that go outside of Chatham Park's PDD? Are those just future easements that would have to be obtained? And we did a similar thing for the Sanford line.
I say that is a very standard thing just in development. Obviously, you've got to get connectivity for sewer and water. So off-site easements,
But it's going through someone's property, right?
Yeah, and then negotiations with that individual would have to occur.
Okay.
So to get those easements. Yes.
Yeah, this is like an overall snapshot of that. As we start to work on the section design plan level, we'll have all of this figured
That's
out.
where that detail would be.
Okay,
They'll have it all.
sorry to interject that. It
No,
was
no, no,
like
that's-
That's a good question.
Personal
That's a,
question.
no, that's a good question.
You have existing easements in place, it's one thing, otherwise it
Mhm.
requires a lot of stuff.
And a lot of
Traffic,
times,
Everything else, right?
a lot of times they will, obviously, you would try to use an existing easement if it's there. Some of it might just be having to widen an easement a little bit, and some of it might need to be getting new easements, but that would be, like she said, once you get to the preliminary plat, or would it be at the
Discussing it at section design plan.
Okay.
I mean, if the applicant doesn't have water and sewer or easements for that,
Hmm.
the likelihood of them going through the process of the section design plan approval is in many ways. I would all.
Explaining that process.
Let's talk about a different type of pipe, and that's natural gas. Is natural gas going to service this area here?
That would be, that's not a requirement by the town, so that would be a question for the applicant.
But the North Village is, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I would assume so. We can add that to the list of questions for the applicant to confirm, but
And then the second part is, are there going to be any transmission lines running through the area? They're just going to be distribution lines.
that when we get the infrastructure, like with the utility lines, I think at that detail, that would probably be more preliminary plat. But if you're asking more from like an overall planning perspective, I think the applicant could speak to that.
Okay.
So we can add that to the list.
And so just so I'm clear about the water situation, the besides the applicant, does anyone else, did anyone else provide subject matter expertise, any of the numbers or anything in this water section?
This,
In terms of estimates of usage and all that sort of stuff?
Tri-River hired a consultant as well to review their entire small area plan. And we have not received the final, I guess, recommendation from them. So we are waiting on that. But they hired a consultant, a third party consultant.
Do you anticipate that the report to be available before soon?
Yes.
Would,
Well, as soon as we get it,
as soon as you get it, yeah.
it'll be public record as soon as I get it. So we can share that with you.
Okay, cool. And the reason why I ask is because it feels, and it might be just my lack of information and knowledge about it, but I just imagine that if you have to increase capacity in terms of sewer and wastewater and water in general, but that the amounts that are and then there's like this whole part about reimbursement, right? Because the developer takes it on, but then it has to go back to Tri-River for reimbursements and all that sort of thing. Like, does that impact everybody else in Pittsburgh in terms of rate coverage increases and things like that? Because we're, for there not to be additional capacity for the rest of the town, but just mostly all this additional capacity that ratepayers may have to supplement through our, rate increases.
No. So development has to pay for itself.
Okay.
So the lines that are being built by the developer, they have to pay for that.
Okay.
Sometimes either a jurisdiction or like in this case, Tri-River, they might offset or they might add to the funds. Let's say if they want to increase the line size or something like that. But whatever impact the development is bringing, they have to pay for that with their construction. For future capacity needs, there's also something that's like an impact fee that's allowed in North Carolina. It's a system development fee. And so for every new proposed either home or business, you have to pay that upfront. And that helps pay for future needs
Okay.
for the system. So they would be paying that as well.
So maybe I'm confused then about on page 52, the reimbursement strategies. So this is right above where it says wastewater. It says, all improvements are required to serve the South Village are proposed to follow a traditional model of developer-funded infrastructure dedicated to the Tri-River water and reimbursement strategies utilizing forgiveness or credits of impact and connection fees for new users, construction within Chatham Park and affiliated areas. So
I can ask about that.
not clear on what
I'm
that,
not sure if that's just language that, speaking of options, but if Tri-River, if there's some sort of agreement between Tri-River and Chatham Park that's separate than what the standard, development that needs to pay, I'll double check on that, but I hadn't heard anything where, the developer would definitely be paying, their fair share of what needs to be, the funds needed for this. But I'll get that sentence clarified.
thank you.
But Teresa, the system development fee is supposed to neutralize costs with the new homeowners assuming all the necessary costs associated with hookups.
Well, no, there's
Lot
tap fees.
Yeah, the lot.
Separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a separate fee.
Okay.
So the capacity fees, impact fees, SDF fees, they all kind of mean the same thing, but that's going back to paying for like future expansion needs for the entire community. Like there would be, estimated, in 20 years, we know we're going to have to expand the sewer plant, for example. They're collecting fees up front for that future expansion. That's what that's for. But in terms of like building the infrastructure, developer has to pay for that up front.
Cool.
Any more questions on utilities? Moving on to parks. This is, again, we were talking about Parks Department is using a consultant called Pond, and we are looking at finalizing those discussions, so we don't have a final recommendation yet. I can say, what is it? Page 60.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Could you go back to waste? I'm so sorry. On page 58, one thing I highlighted, it says, as described in the PDD, Chatham Park will, I'm sorry, 58, last paragraph. As described in the PDD, Chatham Park will serve as a sole point of contact for all stormwater maintenance and compliance responsibilities. And so I wanted to know, is this part of the annual review that you would do with the staff? And what mechanisms does the town of Pittsboro have in terms of compliance with that? Is it something that someone would have to like report? How does that all work?
So we require that all stormwater devices in town be maintained. And each private stormwater device, whoever that owner is, business or HOA of a subdivision or something like that, they have to provide annual inspections. So that statement is just saying that the Chatham Park is just agreeing that they will be maintaining all stormwater devices, not, I guess, Tri-River or the town.
Right.
And that's pretty standard.
But if there was an issue, like not even with Chatham Park, but anybody's stormwater stuff, like
You get a violation.
you get a violation from the,
And
oh, okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
on page 63, we're still working out the details on this table. And the note at the bottom where it says final sizes and locations will be verified during the subdivision and site plan approval process. We want that to be clarified to state that it'll be determined by the town of Pittsboro prior to section design plan approval. So we'll be working out the details well before we get preliminary plats and site plans.
Okay.
And that, again, that goes back to the intent of the section design plans.
On that same page on 63, what is potential Chatham Park improvement site? Did I miss what that in the chart? The header in the chart. I didn't understand what that meant.
Potential Chatham Park.
Is that just actual, like an improved park versus?
Yeah.
Okay. So one that has equipment and.
Okay, cool.
There, originally it was committed and some things changed. I'm gonna allow that flexibility there so that if there was a different area, that could potentially change.
Any other general questions on this chapter? Again, we'll give final recommendations from staff and the consultant. So the next few chapters, I think, are pretty, we can kind of get through them pretty quickly, I would think. Like public arts, chapter 6. Don't really have much information on that yet. We'll get the, more details as development occurs throughout the South Village. Any questions on that? So these are all just required chapters. That's why they're in here, which is a good thing. But with this being a large conceptual plan, we just don't have all those details worked out yet. Chapter 7, cultural and historical resources. So the applicant did provide an assessment based on the whole 5,000 acres. And we did have a local professional review it with the Historical Association. And they did submit comments, which I don't think there was anything, it was more for future reference, but I think that was included. That's included in our final notes with the TRC notes. So I can provide those to you if you'd like to see. And the next chapter is phasing. Everything that's required for the applicant to provide is provided. It's just for future reference again. Chapter 9, public facilities. This is what Chatham Park is proposing. And we have looked at it internally. Still working out some of the details on parks and greenways, but in general, there'll be notes on any concerns that we see, but again, this is all conceptual too, so it could change in the future. But this is a good tool, again, for everybody to use to get an idea of how the South Village is going to be laid out. So if you go to, let's see, page 91, but there's an additional.
Much couch.
I think we might have passed it. In terms of parks. Yeah, in chapter 5, we didn't go through all the maps, but the maps do show a lot more detail on park locations. So if you want to look through your paper copies, like page 62, for example, shows proposed park locations. So even though it's conceptual, there's been a lot of planning that's been involved from the private side and then from the town side as well, and hiring a consultant.
They could all change though, right?
They could if needed, but unless an issue, let's say, happens in the future where today maybe one of those park locations isn't in a floodplain, maybe it will be 10 years from now, let's just say. Then, you know, of course, staff would say, let's look at a new location.
Otherwise, we wouldn't change it.
Unless there's a reason,
Okay.
you know, this has been vetted and looked at internally and through a professional consultant. So overall, it makes sense. But no, it's not written in stone. Chapter 10 is the appendix. So these are all just the required elements that the applicant provided. A lot of it gives more detail and what's already in the plan, but not necessarily needed in the chapters in the beginning. There's also the MOU with the schools attached, starting on page 133, if you wanted to read that. I know there are some questions about what the schools review process looked like, and the input that I received when I spoke with them was that they look at school construction more within like a 5-year timeline. So as of right now, they are agreeable to the one site shown, but through the MOU, there's language that speaks to additional schools.
The threshold of population or students per class or?
The schools, they have an assessment that they do annually. I have a copy of it. I can show you. But it goes through, you know, what the needs are.
Yeah, I've seen it and stuff, and we're sharply past the carrying capacity. You know, I mean, this has been a number of years and stuff. So if they committed to 1, but will likely need 4, you know, again, at what point do we compel them to build another one? Is there a measurement based
Do they
upon
have to
different
build
homes?
any? Do they have to build any?
Yeah.
Would the town be responsible for building a school?
No, it's,
I'm sorry, not the town, county.
yes. I mean, it's pay taxes for it. The county also has an impact fee for schools as well, for each new home that's being built. But yeah, there's a difference in what existing schools are over capacity compared to what the applicant will be provided to build based on what development triggers within the South Village.
Such as like number of homes or?
So if a school's already over capacity, let's say in another area, and Chatham Park is building, there's a system that is in place for the schools to decide, okay, at what point is a new school actually required? So in North Carolina, the reason that we don't have, let's say, like required school fees is the town controls the development. So, you know, if there's an issue with schools being over capacity, each jurisdiction in North Carolina has the ability to say no, to stop development. And of course, Chatham Park's already was rezoned with conditional rezoning with entitlements to move forward. And that's why we're planning on schools that are needed. But just in general, you know, as the town keeps approving and approving more development, that should be something that we're thinking about are the school needs, because the developer's not paying for the schools.
But where are they putting the schools?
That's something that would be worked out in the South Village, that's worked out between the school system and the applicant in initial conversations, but it would be discussed with the town whenever they're proposing their section design plans. So if the schools say we need another school because of the population that Chatham Park is bringing, then we would ensure that that is met within that section design plan that would trigger that requirement.
Okay.
So it's a little different. I guess the conversation that we're having is a little different for the South Village versus like brand new development.
Well, I mean, effectively, it's kind of like Brandon, with the volume of homes compared to what's already existing there. It's a total different density.
It's not a brand new development in the fact that it was already approved though.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. For one, okay,
Up to 22,000 homes.
one school, okay, we got it. No, okay, I'm
But
just,
we know there's going to be more schools needed for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, Pittsburgh is just under 5,000 and we have several schools already.
over capacity, yeah.
Cool. So that's the last chapter. It's the appendix. I think that was everything.
Oh, wait, sorry, I mean, just with that, like, Chatham Park will reserve a sufficient number of school sites, right? And they have one reserved. That's probably not sufficient, right?
Correct.
That will be evaluated further on. I think you said
Yes.
a 5-year plan. And we're talking about a 30-year plan or
Well, yes, at least 15 to 20.
full build out.
So you can read the MOU between the schools and Chatham Park. But based on my conversation with the school system, they would work out when a school is required. We'd be in contact with them. And then when that is needed, it would be required in the section design plan.
And going back to that land use chart in chapter 2, the schools would be in the parts that are identified already as park and institutional.
No, not necessarily.
So where would they be? I mean, would they be in the residential areas or
We don't know exactly the
it
location.
could be in any of those areas?
And it could be outside of this. Right?
Potentially, yeah.
That is much more a county
Yeah, it is.
It is.
decision than, yeah.
So unless you have any more questions,
Have anything else while we have Teresa now?
If you don't mind, I know you took notes of deliverables. Would you just remind us or me of some of those deliverables? Just so I make sure.
That list too, I was gonna go.
Oh, cool, super, thank you.
Let's start with that, and then you can add it. So
go ahead.
there is a discussion around legislative option for the SDPs. Gonna work on that language a little bit, it sounds like, the asterisk items.
Oh, correct. Mhm.
The traffic impact analysis, I think several people here would like to see that. We have a question for the applicant on their plans for work, quote unquote, work, for next meeting. There were a lot of questions around utilities to include natural gas and water and easements, just to see if there is some more information there, given this is a big overarching plan.
And to see the consultant's report.
Yeah, oh yeah, thanks. And then that's what I had. I had a question around the Lorax extension. I think the Eubanks extension is good to go, but the Lorax extension, I don't quite understand that. But we can save that for later as well.
Well, if you want to at least say what your question, I
yeah.
can look into it.
I just, there's just, looks like there's two extensions that go through into town that are both, I think the board's talked about Eubanks already. I haven't heard much about the Lorax extension. It looks like it's going to go through Chatham Park to Lorax Lane. If that's part of the TIA, it'd be good to see that. I don't know if it is.
It is, and it's
Okay.
not a TIA at this point. It's the model. So
Okay.
there's an overall model that was created. Our KK is reviewing that. TIAs come more at the smaller scoping size. So when we have a better idea of what the trips per day are going to be for a specific section, that's when they would submit the TIA. TIA would show more of like what the actual improvements are needed, like stop signs, turning lanes, stop lights, traffic circles, things like that.
I guess like, is the Lorax extension, is everything already ready to go with that? Or is that future problems that we have to look at?
So in the CTP, it goes from 15501, you have the US 15 connector, and that goes through private property. And I guess if we want to go back to that map, if you're more of a visual,
I want to get ahead of the Lorax extension in case there are concerns.
that would be page 33.
I think the Eubanks is pretty well set based on the board,
Yeah.
previous discussion with the board.
As she's bringing that map up, Lorax Lane, so 15, US 15 connector transitions into Lorax Lane. Lorax Lane starts in where Robeson's Walk is, if y'all remember that rezoning.
Yeah.
And that's right where the plant is.
Right.
So currently, it's just a private access easement. It's going to be constructed as a public right-of-way. So if you look at the map, I don't know, we can't zoom in, can we? Like towards the center of town.
Just right there.
Yeah. So you see the US 15 connector. Lorax extension starts at where Industrial Park Drive is. You know where that is, where it's
There you go.
through Robeson's Walk, and then it goes through some private property like the White's Way
Right.
property. And then in the gray areas where Chatham Park is required to start
Okay.
building it.
Looks, yeah, I didn't see this map. The other one just shows this big line cut through everything. So it's very helpful, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So Lorax Lane's already being constructed outside of Chatham Park. They're just required to connect to it.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a look at this. Thank you.
And then one other kind of,
I have a question about the Eubanks connector south, where it hits Bill Thomas Road.
Okay.
Chatham Park would be developing the red area. And
Right,
then,
I think to know exactly what Chatham Park's going to be developing, we would need to look at their transportation, because this is the town's CTP.
yeah,
It's not exactly what they have. So if you go to page 35,
yeah.
you can see they removed several of those future corridors on the eastern side.
My question is, what would happen to this Bill Thomas Road, this little piece here?
When it's black, existing.
It's an existing road.
Yes.
Being minor thoroughfare.
Familiar with it.
Something almost.
So if Chatham Park is developing Eubanks Road, and then what's going to happen to transition it to the Bill Thomas Road?
All the way to Moncur Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Divided. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to require that. When we receive the consultant's recommendations, I'll make sure we look at what they say specifically
I
on
think
it.
that's where the water line's coming off of too, right? Up there.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll ask about that. Because we haven't received RKK's recommendation yet.
Right, I don't understand your question about how
So I
that's
guess-
connecting.
Previously, I just assumed that this whole road would be developed
Like a major thoroughfare, right?
at
Well,
the same time, but now that I'm looking at it,
just stops somewhere.
Yeah,
Someone's
so-
property. Yeah.
and this little portion down here, would that be consistent with the rest of Eubanks Road? And who would be responsible for making it consistent?
Yeah, that, I'll ask. The only, typically in those situations, either the existing thoroughfare is adequate.
It's a gravel road.
It's a gravel road. Okay, well, we'll ask RK&K about that with their review.
Right.
And that can also be something that we can add for the applicants to address as well.
I mean, it's another point as to like when we're talking about the parks or things that are greater or less than five acres, and those are potential future expenses for the town, right? You build a road that butts up to something, it's like, well, then now it's another expense for the town to do and stuff. So we talked about things that we'd like to see them present, and I would like a much more like kind of robust financial impact analysis, or something that at least includes expenses and doesn't include revenue that does not go to us, like Tri Rivers revenue.
Well, there's So there's going to be examples like this that we're going to see throughout the development. Typically, the way it's done is when you get the proposal, that's when you do the TIA. The TIA does say that, if an existing road needs to be improved,
Yeah, but how much?
based on like the proposed development.
Right, and based on the proposed development, it would be nice to see what those expenses are, like what they.
Yeah, we wouldn't know that yet, though. So for example, would be like Reeves Farm. The rezoning was approved or initially for that development.
Mhm.
We did not know what road improvements were going to be needed on roads outside of Reeves Farm. As we're now going through the preliminary plat review process, and when they submitted their TIA, we now know that improvements are needed on 64 Business West. And that's because we were at that level of development where we would need to know, like, what are the improvements that are going to be required? Like the impact that this development is creating on existing roads, they have to make that improvement. So like if if Reeves Farm is putting in a stoplight, 64 Business, that's when that would be just figured out, is when we're at that level. We know exactly what they're proposing, what the development is, and they have to make that
Will there be any, can they say that there'll be no additional expenses to current or future town residents that live, that?
Future developments can show that if a TIA shows that. My concern with that, though, is this.
This is just one small example, but just any expenses were absent, right? How much is this gonna cost current residents to go through, or will it cost us anything out of the pocket? Or will we be, or will our taxes decrease because of it? So, I mean,
If a development is causing an impact to existing infrastructure and it needs to be improved, that development is required to make those improvements before they can build.
so it won't cost any town or ETJ resident or county resident any sort of expense for this whole development.
If it's something that is a need based on this development, that is correct. But that's not going to be decided until we get more details on what they're actually proposing. What concerns me about the Bill Thomas Road, though, is that that is connected to a major road.
Yeah.
So that is something that RK&K should have looked at.
Right.
So I will definitely check on that. I just wanted to make the point that there's going to be lots of examples of this where we don't know all the impacts until we get more detailed plans.
And if that happens, if this is a gravel road and then this becomes a thoroughfare, you're saying Chatham Park would be responsible because it's how do you figure out this is gonna impact the existing, how do you figure that out?
That's, the TIA will show, this is what the impact this development is going to bring. And in order to mitigate that, it's going to require, an existing road to be improved to a 4-lane road.
Who would pay for that?
The developer.
Developer, even though.
Typically, unless it's something that the town also needs to be improved. But like Eubanks is a good example. The CTP shows that as a future 4-way road.
Mhm.
So as Chatham Park is developing Eubanks, we went ahead, worked with DOT in advance and talked about it can stay the 2-lane up until we get to a certain point, and then it's going to have to be improved. So yeah, I'll look into the Bill Thomas Road. I mean, I'm just saying what the typical process is. And I used Reeves Farm as an example because that's like the most recent one that y'all looked at, where they had to make an improvement to an existing road outside of their development because of the impact their development's making on that road. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I just want to find out, one, how the decision-making occurs, right? Like, so in the traffic impact analysis, that's great. And then once that has been identified, who ultimately has to pay for it? And as long as the agreement between the town and the developer is that it's definitely the developer who has to pay for it, then it's fine. The question to me is, who makes a decision about ultimately this is your responsibility to pay versus my responsibility.
Yeah.
Landed.
I can't speak to every single situation. I mean, we don't have anything in the UDO or anything that says XYZ has to be done because every situation is different. I mean, if you want to, it's actually through federal case law. It's the rough proportionality test. If you want to like look into planning and like, it's based on case law.
Mhm.
So, you know, if someone just wants to build 5 homes and the CTP shows that they have to, you know, that a thoroughfare goes through that property, we can't make them build that, right? But if it's a 5,000 acre, 22,000 unit development, that's different. So every situation is a little different. You have to decide what is proportional to what the proposed development is, if that makes sense. But yes, in general, the town can require the development to improve it based on the TIA. But in this particular situation with Bill Thomas Road, I'll check into that and get back to you.
I have a different kind of question about Bill Thomas Road. It's currently a little gravel road with some people living along there. What if they like their little gravel road? They're not part of Chatham Park. If Chatham Park decides that needs to be improved to become a 4-lane busy road, what options do those neighbors have? Will they get a public hearing? Will they have a chance to say, we want to keep our dirt road?
Yeah, and again, it goes to every situation is different. So if we're talking about an existing public right-of-way, it currently could be a gravel road. But if the town decides that it needs to be a 2-lane paved thoroughfare, then the adjacent property owners can't dictate what is going to happen to that road in the future.
So they get no input? I mean, do they have any chance to voice their opinions before this happens?
Okay, so I'm going to try and explain this. This entire 5,000 acre piece of land, this was already approved.
Bill Thomas Road is not part of that 5,000 acres.
I understand when this property was rezoned, the entitlements were given for 22,000 units and square footage. So we would always try and work with adjacent property owners and try to find something that is the best fit. We also can't stop a development from occurring either because existing property owners want to keep something a gravel road. I know that's not like a clear answer, but you know, that just kind of goes along with zoning law and like once you're entitled, we move forward in making those developments occur. We try to mitigate, it.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the map and it looks logical that you would improve that road all the way out to Moncure Road. My question is, what do the neighbors, what are their options? Do they have any option? Or
like legally, do they have options?
Well, I mean, as part of the public process, do they?
They can speak their concerns and, if it's a legislative decision, like the original rezoning, then that could always, it could have been denied at that point. Like, we want to keep this a small gravel road. The decision to allow, a very large development to occur on that road has already occurred. So at this point, the process is, let's try and mitigate concerns that we have from existing property owners. To say that we would stop a major, thoroughfare from going through that road, even though it's on our comprehensive transportation plan. I mean, we'd have to change our entire CTP for that purpose. So, at this point, especially if it's already a right of way, it can be improved as needed by the town.
I'm with Connie. I mean, I'm looking here, we may not want to encourage people to use that road. I mean, it looks like, and I don't have a ruler with me, but looks like 2,000 feet to the north is where they would connect up with the, Chatham Parkway extension. That may be where we want people to go, not up.
Not dump them out onto the road.
Yeah.
We'll look at what the comments are from RK&K when we receive them. And I can let them know what the comments were, from this and get back to you. For sure, because I'm not a transportation planner. And we don't have one on staff, so that's why we consulted this out. I can tell you what, the laws are around it in general, but trying to decide where a corridor should go and what type it should be, that's definitely not my area of expertise.
Just asking to see the traffic impact analysis around that to make sure that it's consistent.
So that would be the model, but you can't review the model unless you have special software. So, that, again, that's why it was consulted out.
I think that report should hopefully that report,
It's not a TIA, whatever it is, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then if we figure it out, if they have a recommendation about who pays for it, that would be super duper as well.
Well, the applicant had to pay a fee prior to submittal.
She's talking about possible improvements.
Oh, I thought you meant sorry.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Corey.
So, yeah, we'll get those comments to RK&K and get back to you on them. But they're great questions for sure.
No, I want to follow up on something Matt brought up, the financial impact analysis. There's the piece that's like, what is this going to cost the town over the next 30 years? Has there been any work or discussion around what happens from years 20 to 50? Is the town finance department or the staff looking at the impact for the next 30 years financially from a cost perspective that would give us, at some point, it may not be today or next week, or even I would hope in time for the town board to vote, but something that would give the town a understanding of the long-term impacts financially for this development?
Yeah, and the town's been working on long-range plans for capacity needs, like staffing and buildings and things like that, separate from what it's being provided from Chatham Park, because we're not looking at just Chatham Park, obviously. So yeah, to answer your question, yes. Chatham Park has provided that analysis. There has been more information requested internally. So we'll get that to you. But as development occurs, then, there's more tax revenue and the ability to hire additional staff and things like that. That is being looked at already before we even receive this analysis.
Good.
Based on all the projected growth.
All right. How's everybody feel? As far as, do you have any more questions you feel you need
Hey, Corey.
that haven't already been thrown out and will be waiting on a response?
I would just like to say, I'm still concerned about the timeline. When this was presented to us at our last meeting, the clock started ticking.
It didn't? No. Yeah.
That's yeah. So tonight we keep hearing over and over, this is to be determined. We'll find more out later. So we still don't have anything final, but the clock is ticking.
What I can gather, because the language is a little confusing. So we've looked at it again. Internally, at least, the way we're interpreting it is, even if the 60 days has passed, the town board does not have to make a decision. And the town board can say, the planning board, is reviewing some comments and questions they asked, and staff is getting that back to them. They need a little more time. That's the way we're interpreting it. That's fine. And the town board does not have to make a decision until that's done.
So what's the expectation for us for our next meeting? Do you expect,
We're going to try and get all of your questions answered by this meeting this month, if we can. So we would basically have packets go out. When does not, no, the following Monday. Not this Monday. Is it?
It's next
Monday? Okay, so we have wait. We had like a week.
165 hours. No.
Okay, well, we will get as much as we can back to you by the time the packets go out. And maybe even after the packets go out, we can try to get some questions answered. We can get back to you at the meeting.
and so you may still be answering questions at our next meeting. And then would you expect us to vote that night?
Or
If a motion comes to the floor to vote on it, then we'll vote on it.
I mean, if there's still some, I would say, concerns based on questions y'all have answered and staff is getting back to you on them, then, we'll try to get that to you for this month's meeting. And then we can, take it from there if you need more time. My point was, though, that the town board does not have to decide after 60 days.
what is the 60-day thing though?
That's just what was agreed upon in 2015. That's the language that was agreed upon.
It says,
It says, the planning board, if you don't make a decision within 60 days, the town board can consider it, whether you make a recommendation or not.
Our recommendation.
They can consider.
oh,
it.
okay.
Doesn't mean, the way we looked at it, again, when we, after the concerns were raised, we looked at it again. It doesn't say they have to. We're looking at consider as they just are reviewing it. They don't have to make a vote right away after 60 days. So,
Thank you for all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you.
Very good.
thank you guys. You asked some great questions. We'll get back to you.
Well, I suppose then, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
And motion by Alan Wilson, seconded by Christina Piard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.